Welcome to the Folk School on Willow Creek, featuring University Distinguished Professor Tom Ezern, singing and telling stories from the salon on Willow Creek.
I need a bed for the night, boys, and my horses need hay. I've been riding that grub line on the hot-dish highway. Two drummers sat at dinner in a grand hotel one day. While dining they were chatting in a jolly sort of way. And when a pretty waitress brought them a tray of food, they accosted her familiarly in a manner rather rude. At first she did not notice them or make the least reply, till one remark was passed that brought tears to her eye. Then facing her tormentor, cheeks now burning red, she looked a perfect picture as appealingly she said, "My mother was a lady, and yours you will allow, and you may have a sister who needs protection now. I come to this great city to find a brother dear. You'd not dare to insult me, sir, if Jack were only here." 'Tis true, one touch of nature makes the whole world akin, and every word she uttered seemed to pierce their hearts within. She left them stunned and silent till just one cry of shame. "Oh, forgive me, miss, I meant no harm. Pray tell me, what's your name?" She told him and he cried again, "I know your brother too. We've been friends for many years, and he often speaks of you. He'll be so glad to see you, and if only you will wed, I'll take you to him as my wife, for I love you since you said." My mother was a lady, as yours you will allow, and you may have a sister who needs protection now. I come to this great city to find my brother dear. You'd not dare to insult me, sir, if Jack were only here. You'd not dare to insult me, sir, if Jack were only here. Well, why are we opening up with the two drummers? And what are drummers anyway? You know, here in the 21st century, do people even get that term? It's not a musical term. It's, of course, a term for salespeople, sales representatives, drummers, traveling men, town to town. They take rooms in the hotel. They set up their wares in a parlor or a special showroom in the hotel. Even a small little prairie town would have such a room for the traveling drummers. And you may recall the scenes involving the drummers in Cather's My Antonia. They're a fixture in every town. Every town, the drummers showed up, and that's what kept the hotel going, really. It was a little bit of a scene on the social life, too. And drummers had a bit of a reputation. But I'm not here to talk about drummers. You know, I sang this because this song appears Where'd I put that stack of books, son? Where are they? Oh, hang on. There we go. It appears in Louise Pound's collection of Americana, American Ballads and Songs. And we're making homage to Louise Pound here at the outset tonight, because her birthday is June the 30th. We got a lot of stuff on the calendar around the last week of June, so we're going a little bit earlier to talk about Louise's birthday in the 30th of June of 1872. And why are we talking about Louise Pound? Well, because she, as we reconstruct the history of folk song on the Great Plains, balladry on the Great Plains, she looms as kind of a gigantic figure in several ways. Well, she's an impressive woman, a nationally competitive athlete, for one thing, but first female president of the Modern Language Association, one of Nebraska's finest intellectually. And I have here her Folk Song of Nebraska and the Central West, a syllabus. This is her collection. What's the date on this again? I hand a little bit tenderly. It's because it's a little fragile. From the meeting of the Nebraska Academy of Sciences, 1913 to 15. Yeah, her collection, scouring around, picking up folk song in Nebraska early in the 20th century. So she's one of the song catchers of the Great Plains. That's her syllabus of folk song in Nebraska and the Central Plains. That's important. She, in general, was a giant for the collecting of American folklore. Here's her book, the collection on Nebraska folklore. In general, not just folk song. Most of all, she's an interpreter of the ballad experience. And she challenged the sort of Ivy League orthodoxy about what ballads. One scholar who famously said, there will be no more ballads, and he said this in about 1900, at the very time Great Plains balladry was exploding. And Pound stood up for balladry on the Great Plains and everywhere, that ballad makers and ballad singers were not primitives, they were folk artists and should be treated with respect. That's why this was a Christmas present from someone present in this room, I believe. Cather's Poetic Origins and the Ballad. And what else? Yes. Well, okay. All this stuff about Cather. She's a song catcher, but she is a pivotal interpreter of the balladic experience on the Great Plains and really in the English-speaking world. But it happens then when she says, no, we're still making ballads, and the people making them are not primitives, they're not tribals or something like that. It's a quaint thing, that sort of ethnological, anthropological view of the early 20th century. No, they're artists. They're a little rougher on the edges, but they're artists. Let's treat them with respect. So we treat her with respect at all times here. The Two Drummers, it actually is a Tin Pan Alley song. And so it shows kind of the distance over a century between Louise Pound collecting in the early 20th century and me now. I can tell you the author of this song, and when sheet music was first published, and when it was performed at New York music houses. She didn't know that it existed in that life. It just came to her word of mouth. People were singing it in Nebraska. And so it becomes a folk song. And it is because the people were singing it, even though its origins were in Tin Pan Alley. How do I know it's a folk song? Not only is it showing up in newspapers, unattributed, people just passing it along. Ethel and Chauncey Moore in Oklahoma, and they're collecting of ballads and songs of Oklahoma. And their collection is the Western History Association, Western History Collections, University of Oklahoma. Sure enough, there it is, the Two Drummers in their collection. Joni O'Brien's collection at Wichita State in the mid-20th century, there it is, by its alternate title, My Mother Was a Lady. None of these people knew its sort of commercial origins. It was all folk song to them, and it is yet today. Well, Pound is a giant figure in letters on the Great Plains in North America. And we have one in the room with us here. Can you tell us what's happening at NDSU Press this week?
Well, I can. We're having a summer sale. We haven't done that.
Did you say a summer sale?
A summer sale. We haven't had a sale for
what,
books.
5-10% off?
5 or 10? No, 50% off.
50% off.
50% off. That's the same discount that our authors get.
Does that mean
And
you're
that's what we're
selling
doing.
Pacing Dakota for 50% off?
I'm trying to.
Let's make it plain that what you have in the warehouse of the Pacing Dakota is the second printing.
That is the second printing. That's right. Yes.
But you're trying to move a few books.
So 50% off. Yep. We need to make room for some new books coming in for 23 and 24. So we are ready to move some of those books out.
Have you got any new books coming?
We do. We have a book at the printer right now. It's a history book about the Turtle Mountain Band of Ojibwe and some treaty work that happened years ago. And that's going to come out just in time for use as a textbook this fall. And we've got already 100 orders for it, so I'm really glad about that. Pre-sales are great. So that one's at the printer. We've got a few that are getting close to be at the printer, and then we're going to start on some brand new ones. We've got 2 new poetry collections, a memoir, and 2 more histories that we're going to work on for the next 6 months.
More of those.
Yeah. That's what we've got.
But how long are you going to run this 50% off deal?
Just till next Wednesday, through next Wednesday.
So by next Wednesday, get your orders in direct at ndsu.org.
Yeah, I'll give a link in the chat line when we're done chatting here. But it's some sale 50% and some spelled SUM, like summer. So some sale 50%, and it'll just tally that up for you when you check out. You just see those dollars fall away from all those books.
Geez, you're giving them away. You're giving them away.
Well, if some of our friends out there show up here, I might give them one. Yeah, that's what we've got going at the press.
Well. We've got ballads to cover tonight, so we better move on to... I never met this guy, Snorri Thorfinnson. I sure wish that I had.
I'd like to meet anybody named Snorri.
People, I'm so old, people think I met everybody, and I'm always, talking about people that it amazes people. What? You knew her? Yeah, well, I did, yes. There's a little bit of a gap between us. Snorri Thorfinnson. I would characterize him almost as a legendary figure in North Dakota. And I became aware of his works and deeds about the turn of this century. And I wrote about him for the first time here in, when was it? Oh, I gave a keynote address out in Bismarck for the State Historical Society meeting entitled Thorfinnson Rides Again, A Sense of Place on the Northern Plains. And then it was published in North Dakota History that year.
What year was that?
It was in this century, 2000 and...
I see it's not on the clay tablet.
The year 2000.
Okay.
It's a millennial piece. And so we're entering his song, which a lot of people around North Dakota, but around the Northern Plains in general too, know. We're entering it in the song bag, the Willow Creek song bag tonight. For those of you who be dropping in, who haven't been with us over the years with this, the Willow Creek song bag is our register of, shall we say, worthy folk song ballads of the Great Plains. To people in literature, it's an exercise in canonization. We put it into the song bag. That's a keeper, is what we're saying. And tonight we're putting in The Plains I Love by Snorri Thorfinnson. Can you tell us something of the provenance of this ballad?
I can. The provenance of the song has always been both evident and indefinite. Historically, it has circulated among members of the Farmers' Union, especially in the author's home state, North Dakota. It has appeared for a half-century or more in summer camp songbooks of the North Dakota Farmers Union, and campers have carried it out into the world with them. Although the song always appears without attribution, Farmers Union folk agree that its author was Snorri Thorfinnson, who was a good Union man.
And I put the footnote on that I learned the tune for the song we're singing tonight, The Plains I Love, from a South Dakota Farmers Union woman named Grace Bubbers, who sang it for me at a South Dakota Farmers Union meeting in Pierre on the 11th of November, 2000. See, everything's millennial tonight. Both she and Chuck Groth, who introduced us one to another, he was a Farmers Union Communications Director, they stated definitely that Thorfinnson wrote the song. Now, Mrs. Bubbers passed away in 2015. I looked that up here, getting ready for tonight, and found that she had. Grace Viola Bubbers, she married Robert Bubbers in 1948, Christ Lutheran in Morristown, lived on the place, homesteaded by Robert's uncle, John Bubbers. Lifelong Christian, devout member of Christ Lutheran Church, she served the Lord and Savior as organist of the congregation and held numerous positions of leadership in the women's organizations of the church. Active member of the Farmers Union, served as the District 6 Education Director for over 35 years. That's Grace Bubbers. I just wanted to pay a little bit of tribute to her tonight, too.
Well done. The Plains I Love does not appear in Thorfinsson's book of verse, Whispering Wings, published in 1954, which indicates the song likely postdates that publication. The only definite attribution of authorship, beyond oral tradition, that has surfaced is a newspaper article in 1965 recounting Thorfinnsson's appearance as guest speaker for the Mandan local of the North Dakota Farmers Union. According to the press report, and I quote here, "Following the meeting, Mr. Thorfinnsson led the assembly in singing a song he has written, The Plains I Love." The present perfect verb in that statement implies recency of authorship as of 1965. Snorri, by that time, had enjoyed a marvelous career of service to the rural prairies, the land he loved as farmer, educator, hunter, and historian. A scion of Icelandic stock from Pembina County, born there in 1901, Snorri seemed born with the sense of saga. The Dean of Agriculture, who greeted him as a student at North Dakota Agricultural College, recalls that Snorri arrived with a determination to educate himself for the service of his fellow man, and departed into life as an inspiring teacher of vocational agriculture, a successful county extension agent, a leader in the guidance of returned soldiers enrolled in the on-the-farm training program, and an enthusiastic supporter of the ideals of cooperation. Thorfinnsson was, in short, a son of the soil. His career led to residence by him and his wife, Olive, also a North Dakota Agricultural College graduate, in a succession of prairie communities, most notably Fort Ransom from 1962 to 1982. There, Thorfinnsson nursed an intense interest in local history with an epic cast, arguing that conical mounds along the Cheyenne River were, in fact, Indian burial mounds, and that they had been visited by Norse explorers who had plied the Cheyenne River.
Snorri cut quite a swath down there at Fort Ransom. Here, as one of our mutual friends wrote when I mentioned him a few days ago, he was my favorite name from Fort Ransom, and that's saying a lot. Another correspondent, my dad used to talk about him all the time. Was he from Fort Ransom? And people said, yes, he's from, of course, don't you know? Another writes, I remember him and my sister used to deliver the Fargo Forum to their house. Growing up in the area, we got to know everyone within biking distance. Snorri and I were quite close. He was my teacher in high school. He made an impression on the people of Fort Ransom. Snorri was a legend around Fort Ransom. Even the locals were sometimes bemused by his archaeological speculations. He was a principal at Fort Ransom High School the year I graduated. Knowing my interests in wildlife conservation, he identified and hooked me up with a correspondence course through NDSU, which helped me find my way through multiple degrees and into a lifelong career. I owe him many thanks. I think that I learned something new in every conversation I had with Snorri, a fine gentleman as well as a scholar. Alan Burke asked, I wonder if Snorri's song is still sung at Farmers Union camps. We're going to answer that tonight. Lori Lawlem says, just on hearing the name Snorri Thorfinnson, that's going to be fun. And finally, spent some time visiting with him at his home in Fort Ransom, bought his book, and it's a memory that I cherish. This is a truly beloved figure on the Northern Plains. Some more context?
Okay. Several elements of persona and regional context are palpable in The Plains I Love, as in much of Thorfinnson's verse. The first is his sense of place and history, both in narrative and in landscape. There let me live and die is a phrase with a wonderfully Norse cast to it, rooted in the Icelandic narrative community of northeast North Dakota. A second contextual element is Thorfinnson's commitment to agriculture as a way of life, which at the time of the song's composition had a positive outlook. Reasonable returns from production and large thriving families on the land sustained Thorfinnson's optimism. A third element, most obvious in this particular song, is his unabashed love of the prairie landscape, which he experienced through the practice of agriculture as well as the pursuit of winged game on the hills and sloughs of central North Dakota. Finally, Thorfinnsson seems to have been exceedingly content in Fort Ransom, in the beautiful Cheyenne River Valley, the home country of his beloved olive. The song text provided here is as published in the 2022 Farmers Union Camp Songbook. The melody is as sung by Grace Bubbers on November 11, 2000.
Those of you of Farmers Union roots at home, join in. I love the mountains, I love the hills, winding rivers and whispering rills, but my heart with contentment fills. Out on the plains I love, out on the plains where the wind blows free, that is the place I am longing to be. There good fortune will smile on me, there let me live and die. I've wandered far from where I was born, sometimes happy, often forlorn, always remembering the wheat and the corn, out on the native plains. Out on the plains where the wind blows free, that is the place I am longing to be. There good fortune will smile on me, there let me live and die. On me the city cast no spells, I hate its noise and assorted smells. Oh, what relief when my road map tells I'm on the plains again. Out on the plains where the wind blows free, that is the place I am longing to be. There good fortune will smile on me, there let me live and die. If you would live where the skies are blue, North Dakota's the land for you. Land where the people are brave and true, this is the land we love. the steam moon in the autumn sky, listening to the wild goose cry. Sometimes I wish that I might fly back to Dakota's plains. Out on the plains where the wind blows free, that is the place I am longing to be. There good fortune will smile on me. There let me live, there let me live, and I. The Plains I Love, Snorri Thorfinnson, Fort Ransom, North Dakota. Having a guest with us tonight, Dr. Kay?
We have quite a few guests, and some of them have questions.
Oh, no.
Well, first, Marla she contends that the weather's only dicey, which is what you wrote before we got started on the program. Yep. It's only dicey if you have wheat to cut.
What? You've actually got wheat to cut?
And then Amanda and Joe Biles are apparently sitting out on the back patio in their summer warmth in Texas.
Picking figs, no doubt.
Picking figs,
yes.
Oh yes, just living the life. And Joe has a question for you.
Yes.
Please elaborate on pre-Columbian Norse indigenous contact.
What am I, Google?
Ready, set, go.
See, I'm not going to step into that one. But there, what I was referring to with Snorri there, he contended that there are these holes in the rock, like round, like you'd taken an auger and bored in there. And Snorri contended that those holes in the rocks on the shores of the Cheyenne River were bored there in order to insert a spike and hammer it in there tight that would hold a ring on it to which they would moor their vessels as they came plying up the Cheyenne River. This is the only North Dakotan that I know of who espouses the theories of Viking mooring stones dating from the beginning of the last millennium. There are a lot of Minnesotans, however, who believe that there are mooring stones in various places there. Others, less romantic, perhaps, say, no, those were drilled in order to insert sticks of dynamite to blast out building stone.
I'm going to also give a shout out to Cade Ferris, who is watching tonight. Yes, so that textbook that I mentioned, Cade did beautiful colorization work for the cover on that.
Oh, it is a gorgeous piece.
I can't wait for people to be seeing that everywhere.
Outstanding.
Thank you, Cade.
Hey, let's, while you're looking over the guest list and that sort of thing, things going on around this part of the country over the week. So much goes on in the summer because, you know, it's hard to do a lot of things in the winter. You get kind of reduced down to high school basketball in many cases across much of the landscape here. Nothing wrong with that, of course. Knife River Indian Villages, National Historic Site up there northwest of Bismarck. This Saturday, pottery making workshop, a ranger-led experience to make traditional coiled pottery, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Park Outdoor Pavilion, 20-30 minutes to make a pot, they say. Oh, that's easy. Event for all ages, free of charge. We're fortunate to have the National Park Service at two great sites within North Dakota. I will say for the National Park Service, keep your hands off our Dakota horses and our longhorns. They were here before you were. Let well enough alone. Oh, okay, now I'm on a rant. If you're looking, if you think you have some game as a pie baker, you might want to drop by Fullerton, North Dakota tomorrow. Registration is noon to 1 p.m. at the Carroll House. We've stayed there. You remember that, huh? I remember stealing internet off the grain elevator across the state street. And
people did look at us kind of funny.
You have to, pie entries have to be 2 crusted homemade apple pies in a disposable pie tin. This Saturday, registration noon to 1 p.m. The pie auction will take place at 3:30 in the Fullerton City Park, barring rain, which is fairly likely. Prizes awarded, I don't have details. But all these things I talk about, they're posted in the Facebook group called Heritage Trails. Again, if you consider yourself a master baker, you might want to get on a rhubarb baking contest in New Rockford. That would be next Friday. During the street market, 4 to 8 p.m., rhubarb baking contest. Register your goodies from 5:30 to 6 p.m. Bring 3 pieces for the judges, they say. Judging that kind of thing can actually be kind of hard. You end up taking in a lot of...
We've been cooking
When we were cooking judges, yes. When we were cooking judges.
The problem was it was all good.
Tomorrow, we're hitting the road. And we'll probably get rain down, but what the heck, I got Gore-Tex to pack up with me. We're headed for Lair, the smallest city in the United States that is situated in 2 counties. Yes, that's right. You can Google that out for yourself. And they're celebrating their centennial. They got going on it today. Right now, the front fenders are about to go out and play a street dance in Lair, and they've had a meal there already. Saturday, though, we'll be taken in. We won't get there for breakfast, but by God, we're going to make the parade. Now, why is that? The best centennials and the best parades come in the smallest towns. You remember that 4th of July parade in McLeod? And the one in Forbes is a kick, too. Well, I anticipate great things in Lair. Population, 82? We'll be down there for the Lair Centennial, however. And we're going to sign up, I think, for the airboat rides on Lair Lake. I think we should do that. Various stuff going on through the day. But we're particularly there to catch the Dakota Rangers. All right. I don't know who's your big territorial band wherever you are on the prairies, right? There's this other level stuff. What's a band that plays out there at the Braddock Threshing Grounds? The Johnny Holm Band.
Yes,
That's your big kind of cover band that plays all over the territory around here. But there's this other level around here, and that's your polka band. And so your territorial polka band right now is the Dakota Rangers, and we're going to be taking them in tomorrow afternoon. They're going to start playing at 2:30 in the Lair Veterans Memorial Hall. That'll be a kick. Yeah. And you were asking, are they doing anything out at the Lair Tabernacle? And they actually are having church services there on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Kind of winding up the centennial. On the way home, I propose we dropped in at the Drift Prairie Brewing Company, the new brew pub in Jamestown. You know why?
Because we like whiskey.
There's no whiskey. It's a brew pub.
Because we like beer.
Well, there's that. But you know how a brew pub often will serve flights of beer, taste our beers.
Yes.
They actually serve flights of Coogan. Yeah, I think we check that out. Okay, that's enough of that stuff. We've got a couple ballads here yet to get in, and one of them is known to everyone, but particularly our friends who are with us from Kansas. I was looking into some of the background by which the state of Kansas declared Home on the Range the official state song of Kansas on the 30th of June, 1947. Both houses adopted it on the same day. Amazing expedition and wisdom on that day, but then they began to mess with it. I'm looking here at a feature article about someone. I realized, hey, wait a minute, I know this guy, Dr. I.E. Nickel. A friend who you haven't met, but you know about him, that hung out with down in Emporia. He married Dr. Nickel's daughter. It didn't last real long, but But I remember going out to Dr. Nickel's house, just north of Salina, kind of built into the hillside out there. But Dr. Nickel was originally from Smith County. And in 1947, he was the state representative from Smith Center, and he introduced the bill to make Home on the Range the state song. The bill passed overwhelmingly, this reporter recounts, with the help of Mrs. Nickel, who performed the song before the Senate. But there were grumblings. Musicians thought it wasn't modern enough, said Nickel, who championed Home on the Range because of its historic Smith County origins. Others wanted something a little more glitzy, a little more, ad agency-like. So they passed it. And then immediately, the Kansas Industrial Development Commission, like your state Chamber of Commerce, offered a $100 prize for somebody to fit new words to the tune for Home on the Range. That would be, I don't know. That would not be Home on the Range. One version went, their winner began, "There's a state in the West that is surely the best in the whole of our grand USA." Well, Dr. Nickel was not impressed. He said, "I'd rather have the bill repealed than see them make a parody of it." My goodness. Fortunately, none of that ever caught on. And so the state was left with a genuine, honest folk song by Brewster Higley. Dr. Nickel's an osteopath. I think he's passed away by now. The reporter said, however, when he was elected to the legislature from Smith County, he had a sort of built-in constituency, having delivered 3,300 Smith County residents into the world. Post-World War II, a lot of babies coming around, right? I think we should have a ceremonial reading of House Bill 198, designating Home on the Range the state song of Kansas. What do you say, Dr. K?
Here goes. Session Laws 1947, pages 768 to 769. Chapter 433, Kansas State Song, House Bill 198, an act establishing a Kansas state song. Whereas the words of the song Home on the Range, originally entitled My Western Home, were written by Dr. Brewster Higley, a pioneer Kansas physician, in his cabin on Beaver Creek near Smith Center in 1871 or 72. And whereas My Western Home, as originally written, consisted of 6 verses. Those most often used are the first and fifth. The second verse mentions the banks of the Beaver, which refers to Beaver Creek in Kansas, and the gale of the Solomon Vale, which refers to the Solomon River Valley in this state. And whereas Dan Kelly, a local druggist and friend of Dr. Higley, composed the music to My Western Home at the request of mutual friends of Dr. Higley and Mr. Kelly. And whereas, although Home on the Range has become known as a cowboy song, the phrase Home on the Range does not appear at all in the original words. While Home on the Range has become more popular than My Western Home, any examination of the changed version of the music or verses reveals it as the same. And whereas the song Home on the Range is as truly Kansas as the Sunflower and the Jayhawks, and has grown to such immense popularity that admirers in other states have often tried to change the words to make them applicable to their locality. Now, therefore, be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Kansas, Section 1, that the song Home on the Range, as originally written with the words by Dr. Brewster Higley and the music by Dan Kelly, is hereby established as the Kansas state song. Section 2, this act shall take effect and be in force from and after its publication in the statute book. Approved April 8, 1947.
Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. And the sky is not cloudy all day. Oh, give me a gale of the Solomon Vale, where the life springs with buoyancy flow, on the banks of the Beaver, where seldom if ever any poisonous herbage doth grow. Oh, give me the land where the bright diamond sand throws its light from the glittering stream, where glideth along the graceful white swan, like a maid in a heavenly dream. Oh, home, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. Oh, I love the wild flowers in this dear land of ours, the curve to the wild curlew spring, the bluffs and white rocks and the antelope flocks that graze on the hillside so green. How often at night, when the heavens are bright with the light of the glittering stars, have I stood there amazed, and I asked as I gazed if their glory exceed that of ours. Home, home, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the sky is not clouded all day. Where the air is so pure, the breezes so free, the zephyrs so balmy and light, that I would not exchange my home here to range forever in azure so bright. Oh, home, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the sky is not clouded all day. Well, I got to be sentimental in another way. You remember that night in Manhattan, Kansas? We were at that event honoring Jim and Kathy Hoy.
Yes, I sure do.
And we got the guitars out, and Jim and I were singing Home on the Range. And naturally, everyone stood. And the first person on her feet was Senator Casabal. And naturally, then everybody got up, and we were singing along in Home on the Range. It was really pretty edifying
it was
event.
Amazing, yes.
But then afterward, he came up and he said, "Did you notice that guy in the front row?" I said, "Which one?" He said, and you said, "The one who looked exactly like Michael Martin Murphy." And I said, "Well, there's a reason for that." And, "What's that?" "Because that's Michael Martin Murphy, who had some lady friend there and who'd brought him to that thing there." And so she said, "You mean you and Jim were up there singing and Michael Martin Murphy's listening to you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, life takes some strange turns at times." But now, I'm not going to make too much of this, but you probably notice I have a particular chord progression that I use for Home on the Range. It is atypical. When Michael played for the soundtrack of the documentary on Home on the Range, came out a couple years ago, somehow the same chord progressions found their way into his arrangement. I'm just saying.
Now we know that same chord progressions appear in lots of songs.
Yep, it's not an unlikely coincidence.
No.
Certainly not. Just saying. Well, okay. How do we wrap this thing up? We've got a calendar ballad. Our usual shtick, again, for those of people who may be fairly recent converts to the Willow Creek Folk School, most weeks write an original ballad about stuff going on. It might be the state basketball tournament. It might be the changing season. It might be rhubarb. Not rhubarb this week, but you notice we do this thing in the winter, and it's dark as pitch around here, all around. And then now we got plenty of light here at 9 o'clock at night. And it's actually darker than usual at 9 o'clock right here because we're just on the heels of the solstice. The calendar ballad this week then is entitled High Summer and High Latitude. Give me a moment here. And then we'll bring it home from there. Oh, there once was a lad from Missouri, a strapping young fellow, they say, with a strong reputation for working from dawn until dusk every day. Now he thought he might go to the prairies, have a look at that wide open land. Some farmer in big North Dakota would be happy to hire a good hand. He got a job with a Norwegian farmer, and he slept in the barn on the straw. And all the young Norwegian lasses had a look and they liked what they saw. So he picked rock and mucked out the stable, did the seating and worked cattle too. No matter the task or the weather, the lad from Missouri pulled through. The lad had the muscle and the stamina, and he had the right attitude. But the thing that he failed to consider was high summer at high latitude. For the days are as long as a sermon for a sinner who will not repent. And the best willing worker is tuckered way long before daylight is spent. Harrowing the summer fallow on evening 3 weeks into June. And he thought as his spirit was flagging, the sun will be setting now soon. Though they found him out there in the morning, in the dirt and the straw he lay sprawled. No visible sign of a struggle, but the coroner had to be called. Neighbors commenced laying wages on what caused the death of the lad. They said poisoning, trampling, heart failure, and other things equally bad. But they nodded their heads in agreement, for the coroner's verdict was true. The lad died from a pure lack of slumber, high summer and high latitude. But the deer and the antelope play. Well, I love those mountains, I love the hills, winding rivers and whispering rills. But my heart with contentment fills out on the plain that I love. Heavens are bright with the light of the glittering stars. How I stood there amazed, and I asked as I gazed if their glory exceeds that of ours. Misty moon in the autumn sky, listening to the wild goose cry. Sometimes I wish that I might fly back to the coolest plain. Won't you give me the land where that bright diamond sand flows leisurely down the stream, and the graceful white swan goes gliding along like a maid in a heavenly dream. Seldom is heard of a discouraging word out on the plain where the wind blows free. There let me live and die. The skies are cloudy all day. Dr. Kelly.
We now conclude today's edition of the Folk School on Willow Creek. We invite you to join us again next Friday at 8 p.m. Central Time for more songs and stories.